A meeting on the peace plan between representatives of Ukraine and the United States is taking place in Berlin. It has been ongoing for about 4 hours now. The Ukrainian delegation is headed by Volodymyr Zelensky. Also at the table are NSDC Secretary Rustem Umerov, Chief of the General Staff Andriy Natov, and Deputy Foreign Minister Serhiy Kyslytsya. On the American side are U.S. Presidential Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump advisor Jared Kushner. As President Zelensky stated on Telegram before the meeting began, every detail of the document needs to be thoroughly discussed. The head of state emphasized that the most important thing is for all the steps Ukraine agrees upon with its partners to actually work for guaranteed security. The 20-point peace plan calls for a ceasefire. President Zelensky reported this during an online conversation with journalists. According to the ambassadors of the head of state, significant efforts were required to arrange a meeting between representatives of the US and European countries in Berlin in order to try to stop Putin through joint efforts.
The summit in Berlin is important. We are meeting with both the Americans and the Europeans. This is the format of this alliance. It is important to us. And believe me, we have done a lot to make sure all these parties could meet together. And today these meetings are taking place in Berlin today and tomorrow. Can this change the security situation on the ground? Absolutely. Because we are considering a 20-point framework plan at the end of which there is a call for a ceasefire. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine.
Before negotiations with the United States, with representatives of the United States, Volodymyr Zelensky had a phone conversation with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. Zelensky thanked Paris for its support and stated that partners are now closely coordinating their actions for collective security. In turn, Macron stated that France supports Ukraine, while Putin is not ready to stop the war.
Americans, Europeans, and Ukrainians want only peace. Despite the fact that Russia continues its aggressive war, Ukraine is holding on. France supports and will continue to support Ukraine in its efforts to build a strong and lasting peace, capable of guaranteeing the security and sovereignty of Ukraine and Europe in the long term. I thank all the Ukrainian, European, and American negotiators who have mobilized to achieve this goal.
This is a decisive moment for Ukraine's future, and Europe will continue its support to achieve a just peace. This was stated by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen after discussing the US peace plan and frozen Russian assets. This was reported by the British government. In addition, the leaders noted positive momentum in the negotiations and expressed hope for further progress in the coming weeks. The peace plan to end the war must, above all, be fair to Ukraine. This was stated by Volodymyr Zelensky during a conversation with journalists. According to the President of Ukraine, some compromises have already been reached, which in the end may not satisfy everyone. But the main thing the head of state emphasized is that the document should be able to stop Russian aggression.
The plan will not be one that everyone likes. Of course, there are many compromises in one form or another. The latest comments and changes to the plan we have sent to the United States of America. In my opinion, the most important thing is that the plan is as fair as possible, first and foremost for Ukraine, because it was Russia that started the war. And most importantly, it must be effective so that the plan is not just a piece of paper but a significant step toward ending the war. And what is also important is that the plan should be such that after it is signed, Russia will have no opportunity to start another one. A third act of aggression against the Ukrainian people. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine. In
Zaporizhzhia, at least 14 people have been injured as a result of an attack by Russian strike drones. In one district of the city, a supermarket building was damaged, and in another, cars caught fire in a parking lot. The explosions blew out windows and balcony doors in 6 apartment buildings. Our report covers the aftermath of the Russian drone strike.
The Russian attack on Zaporizhzhia began at around 10 a.m. on December 14th. Before the explosion, people heard the distinctive sound of an approaching drone.
I clearly heard some kind of distinct buzzing sound, but it definitely wasn't a missile. No, not at all.
A Russian attack drone struck a supermarket in the center of a residential neighborhood. The explosion destroyed the storefront, part of the roof, and the sales floor. At the time of the explosion, there were several dozen shoppers in the store. People who were near the epicenter of the explosion, including a 6-year-old child, sustained shrapnel wounds and blast injuries. The shockwave shattered windows in the nearby 9-story apartment buildings.
A blow? I stepped away from the window. A second one for me. I haven't had one yet.
Actually, I served on a Russian cruiser and it was intense there. It's roughly like a single barrel.
Rescuers and utility workers are eliminating the aftermath of the attack. They're covering window openings with wooden boards instead of the broken glass. They're collecting debris.
From now on, we'll have to make do. Next, we'll see which direction to take for the restoration. We're helping people. Charitable organizations and social services are working.
Another drone exploded in a parking lot in another part of the city. About 10 cars burned there. Oleg Pritikin, Boris Yakovenko from Zaporizhzhia for Freedom TV channel.
At night on December 14th, Russia once again attacked the Odessa region with strike drones, according to the regional military administrations. Energy, transportation, and civilian infrastructure were damaged. No reports of casualties have been received. All services are working at the scene. Points of invincibility have been set up, and critical facilities have switched to generator power. After the previous attack, public electric transport is not operating in Odessa. Buses have been put on the routes instead. In addition, in Kherson, Russian occupiers attacked the grounds of one of the medical facilities with a drone. According to the city military administration, 2 people were injured as a result of the attack. They have been hospitalized. Sumy was also under Russian attack. A multi-story residential building was damaged by a drone strike. The upper floors of the building suffered the most destruction, according to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Rescue workers are on site. The blast wave shattered windows and also damaged civilian vehicles. According to preliminary information, there are no casualties. In total, over the past day, 25 settlements in the Sumy region were subjected to 70 attacks. These were shellings by Russian troops. As a result of the attack in the Seredina Buda community, an 80-year-old woman was killed. Also, in this area, 2 private houses were damaged, according to the regional police. In other communities of the region, apartment buildings and private houses, as well as a civilian enterprise, were damaged by the destruction. In the Novorod-Siversky district of Chernihiv region, Russian occupiers struck a residential building. 2 people were injured, including a 14-year-old child. This was reported by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. In the city of Semenivka, a gas station caught fire as a result of the attack. In the Koryukivka district, Russians attacked administrative buildings with drones. There were no casualties. Overall, this week, Russia has launched more than 1,500 attack drones, nearly 900 guided aerial bombs, and 46 missiles of various types at Ukraine. This was reported by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. In 7 regions, hundreds of thousands of families remain without electricity. All services are working to restore electricity, heating, and water supply in the regions after Russian strikes on the energy infrastructure. Russia is prolonging the war and wants to cause as much harm as possible to our people, the President of Ukraine emphasized.
Ukraine needs peace on dignified terms, and we are ready to work as constructively as possible. These days will be filled with diplomacy. It is very important that it brings results. I am counting on the support of our partners. Thank you to everyone who is helping. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The Russian Federation has intensified the recruitment of mercenaries in Iran. There, leaflets are being distributed offering to join the Russian Federation's forces for a one-time payment of $20,000, and then to receive about $2,000 per month. This was reported by the Center for Countering Disinformation under the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. The Embassy of the Russian Federation in Iran denies this information. According to Ukrainian intelligence estimates, Russia has already recruited at least 18,000 foreigners from 128 countries. Thus, Russia is compensating for its losses and preparing new offensives. And since the beginning of the day, 95 combat clashes have already been recorded in the combat zone. More details about the situation on the front line, as well as about the successful strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces on strategic targets in the Russian Federation and in temporarily occupied territories. Watch further.
The armed forces of Ukraine continue to carry out successful strikes on Russian oil refineries. Thus, on the night of December 14th, Ukrainian Defense Forces struck one of the largest plants in Krasnodar Krai, the Afipsky oil refinery. The facility processes raw materials into gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil, with most of its products being exported. The plant is an important facility in southern Russia. In addition, the Urupinsk oil depot in the Volgograd region was hit. Additionally, special units of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, the refinery, burned down 2 expensive radar systems belonging to the Russian occupiers in temporarily occupied Crimea. This is yet another confirmation of the effectiveness of Ukrainian strikes on the rear positions of the Russian army. Special forces of military intelligence are systematically demilitarizing temporarily occupied Crimea, particularly targeting Russian air defense systems. And the Special Operations Forces struck several more targets in the temporarily occupied territories. In Crimea, near Yantanoye, Azov strike UAVs hit a moving train carrying fuel for the occupying Russian troops, and also targeted an oil depot in the settlement of Bitumnoye. In Donetsk region, the SOF struck a Volna 2 electronic warfare station near Maryanovka, and near Dokuchevsk they hit a training center for Russian army UAV operators. From
a strategic point of view, in fact, today the front is always interconnected, so obviously all of this is related. And again, the strikes by the defense forces of Ukraine on the temporarily occupied territories where, for example, enemy infrastructure, including energy infrastructure, is operating or has operated, are targeting the occupiers. All of this is being destroyed. Today, look at the operations on the temporarily occupied territories. I would especially like to emphasize this is not only about the territory of the Russian Federation. Today, it is not just becoming systematic there, it has already become systematic.
In the southern Slobozhansky direction, a unit of unmanned systems from the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine worked effectively against the enemy. Strix, the border guards with precise FPV drone strikes, destroyed 2 shelters, 2 communication antennas, and 3 enemy vehicles. In the Lyman direction, Ukrainian units repelled attacks by the Russian army in the areas of the settlements of Novoselivka, Shredne, and Zarekne. In the Konstantinovka direction, Russian occupiers attempted to assault the positions of Ukrainian defenders near Shcherbinovka, Pleshchayevka, Yablonovka, and towards Sofiyivka. And in the Pokrovsk direction, the enemy attacked in the areas of the settlements of Kotlina, Udakhne, Molodetske, as well as towards Novopavlivka and Mirnohrad.
The most difficult situation is indeed in the Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad directions.
We see that the enemy is trying to completely encircle Mirnohrad. They have shifted from the tactic of infiltrating the city. They are not succeeding. Our soldiers are holding their positions very firmly. And still we are supplying both drones and other equipment, both the first batch of ammunition and additional resources. That's why the defense is holding along the entire perimeter of the city. The enemy has entered several sectors on the outskirts, but there is no further advance. That's why over these past 2 days we are seeing active fighting not only for the city itself, but also counterattacks against those groups trying to enter from the north and south. We are conducting counterattacks and delivering heavy strikes on enemy formations with artillery, equipment, and drones. This reduces the number of possible attacks and especially the enemy's reserves. The same goes for Krovsk. We have stabilized the situation. Yes, the enemy has repeatedly reported that Mirnograd and Pokrovsk have been captured, but they have failed in this regard.
Russian forces tried to break through in the direction of the village of Grishino, north of Pokrovsk. To do this, they used a column of motorcycles and ATVs. This was reported by the 7th Air Assault Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The enemy stopped in the area of the disrupted logistics route. After that, Ukrainian drone operators, in coordination with artillery, delivered precise strikes on the column. After the Russian column was destroyed, the remaining Russian infantry tried to disperse in the fields and forest belts, but they were eliminated by Ukrainian defense forces. During the further clearing of the area, the Ukrainian defense forces continued to inflict losses on the enemy, significant losses. And over the past day, they eliminated 710 Russian occupiers. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale war have exceeded 1,188,000 military personnel. In addition, the day before, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 1 tank, 7 armored combat vehicles, 9 artillery systems, 1 air defense system, and 81 units of enemy automotive equipment.
The Latvian Sejm has made an important decision regarding military support for Ukraine. The deputies voted to reallocate 5 million euros from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs budget for this year. These funds will be directed to the Ministry of Defense for the purchase of drones to meet the needs of the Ukrainian army. As explained by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, this step was a forced response to Hungary's blocking of the European Peace Facility. As a result, Latvia's planned contributions became unavailable for their intended use. In this way, Riga found an alternative way to quickly support Kiev while simultaneously stimulating its own defense industry. Putin will not stop. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz compared the Russian dictator Putin to Adolf Hitler. This was reported by the German media. Merz recalled the consequences of the 1938 Munich Agreement when Nazi Germany received the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia in exchange for a promise of peace. But just 6 months later, Germany broke the agreement by occupying the entire country and then started World War II. According to the German Chancellor, similar actions by Putin are leading to a growing threat to peace. This is Russia's aggressive war against Ukraine and Europe. If Ukraine falls, Moscow will not stop. Just as in 1938, the Sudetenland was not enough. Putin will not stop. Friedrich Merz, Federal Chancellor of Germany, in a Peace for Clash report. Meanwhile, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is trying to intimidate EU countries with alleged serious consequences because of the vote on the ban on returning Russia's frozen assets. He wrote about this on Facebook. According to the Hungarian Prime Minister, Brussels has crossed the Rubicon, and he also called the seizure of hundreds of billions from another state a declaration of war. Orban also emphasized that Hungary will protest against the EU's decision. Let me remind you, on December 12th, the EU countries decided to freeze Russian assets worth 210 billion euros indefinitely. This eliminated the risk that Hungary and Slovakia, which maintain warm relations with Russia, could block the extension of the freeze and thus allow the money to be returned to the aggressor. A Russian oil refinery in Syzran has halted operations after an attack by Ukrainian drones, Reuters reports. The drones struck the main equipment of the facility, the primary oil distillation unit. In November 2025, Ukrainian Defense Forces attacked the oil processing facilities of the aggressor country at least 14 times, according to calculations by Bloomberg journalists. They are not slowing down in December either, with Ukraine's armed forces striking the largest Russian oil refineries. Details from Victoria Chistyukina.
At night on December 14th, Ukrainian Defense Forces struck one of the largest oil refineries in the Krasnodar region, the Afipsky refinery. The facility produces gasoline, diesel, fuel oil, vacuum gas oil, and sulfur. Its design processing capacity is over 6 million tons per year. Because of its strategic importance, the Afipsky refinery has already been targeted multiple times by Ukrainian drones.
This is about depleting the Russian Federation's capabilities to fill its budget, the lion's share of which is directed towards supporting the so-called special military operation. This is a good thing. And the fact that we are now able to strike with our drones and our missiles at quite long distances, over 1,000 kilometers, is obviously a very positive factor.
That same night, the special military operation struck the Urupinsk oil depot in the Volgograd region. According to media reports, the Alpha Yol oil depot has 18 storage tanks. It receives petroleum products from suppliers, stores them, and then ships them to clients. The Ukrainian Defense Forces also struck military targets in territories temporarily occupied by Russia, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In the temporarily occupied territory of Donetsk region, the targets of the Ukrainian Armed Forces were electronic warfare stations, 2 command posts of units, and the Imbir radar station.
In the temporarily occupied territories of the Zaporizhzhia region, a Torum-2 anti-aircraft missile system and an enemy drone systems laboratory were hit. In addition, in the temporarily occupied territory of Ukrainian Crimea, our soldiers struck 2 fuel and lubricants depots, a Kasta-2 Echo-2 radar station, and an expensive component for S-300, S-400 air defense systems, the 96 Lima-6 Echo radar station. This is according to reports from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
Earlier, on the night of December 12th, units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces struck oil refinery facilities. Slavneft Yanos in the Yaroslavl region. After the strike, a large-scale fire broke out on the plant's territory.
This is one of the largest refineries of the occupiers, capable of processing up to 15 million tons of oil and oil condensate per year. It is involved in supplying the armed forces of the Russian invaders. This is according to a report from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
The Russian oil refinery Syzran in the Samara region has stopped processing oil after an attack by Ukrainian drones, Reuters reports, citing sources.
Sources reported that the drones struck the CDU-6 primary oil processing unit, which is the main equipment at the facility. This unit had also been targeted by drone attacks in August and required 2 weeks of repairs at that time. One of the sources said that the latest repair work could take about a month. Last year, the plant produced 800,000 tons of gasoline, 1.5 million tons of diesel fuel, and 700,000 tons of fuel oil, according to a Reuters publication.
After the drone attack on December 11th, a Russian oil production platform halted operations. This was the first time a Russian oil production facility in the Caspian Sea had been hit. And already on December 12th, a second strike followed. 2 platforms were hit at once due to regular drone attacks. The volume of oil refining in the Federation has reached its lowest level in at least the past 5 years, according to the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service.
Our drones are generally directed at Russian military industry facilities, military infrastructure, military targets, as well as oil refining facilities, or the gas transportation infrastructure of the Russian Federation, which accordingly will have consequences in the future both in terms of supplying and supporting the Russian army and in terms of logistical problems, which will only continue to grow for the Russians.
Restoring oil refining capacities. The aggressor country can't keep up because of new drone attacks, and access to Western components and equipment is blocked due to sanctions. As a result, major Russian energy companies are unable to meet the demand for gasoline on the domestic market. A fuel shortage is being observed in most regions of the Federation. According to suppliers, since the beginning of the year, fuel prices have soared by 40 to 50%.
Poland has proposed that Ukraine hold the first meeting between Presidents Karol Nawrocki and Volodymyr Zelensky in Warsaw on December 19th. This information was confirmed by the press secretary of the Polish leader, Rafał Leskiewicz. According to him, the details of the planned visit are currently being coordinated. Among the possible topics of discussion are issues of security, the economy, and also history. This meeting is intended to set the tone for further bilateral relations between Kiev and Warsaw, Leskiewicz noted. The Pope is ready to come to Ukraine, but there are difficulties related to security issues. Nevertheless, the Vatican has already developed an organized plan that will allow the pontiff to make this visit. The Pope once again expressed his wish to make every effort to achieve a just and lasting peace. He also called on Italian diplomats to do the same. According to the Pope, in order to reach agreements, one must be a person of dialogue. The UN General Assembly will already vote tomorrow, December 15th, on the updated draft resolution regarding human rights violations in the territories of Ukraine and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea temporarily occupied by Russia. The document notes numerous violations by the Russian occupiers, including repression, torture, persecution of journalists, and Crimean Tatars. The text of the resolution also includes a provision on the harsh treatment of Ukrainian prisoners, both military and civilian. In addition, a reminder of the importance of complying with the Convention on the Prevention of the Crime of Genocide has been added. The preamble also contains a call for a peaceful settlement in accordance with the UN Charter.